Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Noz Urbina, and this is OmnichannelX's Omnichannel Podcast. OmnichannelX is brought to you by Urbina Consulting. OmnichannelX is our international learning portal where we host the thought leaders and case studies we think will be most helpful for content-rich organizations trying to build better relationships across all touchpoints. Now, enjoy the show. Hello, everybody. I am very excited to have Brian Piper with me today. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Noz. How's it going?
Great. I am Brian is an author, international keynote speaker, and consultant. Brian and I have been bouncing around the same world for quite a while, and this is the first time we've actually sat down on a podcast. So I'm happy to tell you about him. He has been in digital content since 1996, working with companies including Xerox, L3 Harris, IBM, and Volvo. He spent the last 8 years focusing on data analytics, digital marketing, and content strategy. And since 2021, he's been diving into AI, Web3, community building, and the metaverse. So you can probably tell why I am so excited to talk to him. He's also co-authored the second edition of Epic Content Marketing with Joe Polizzi, and is a contributing author and co-editor of The Most Amazing Marketing Book Ever with Mark Schaefer. So, Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am really, really excited about this because we have a lot of overlaps in our interest areas. I am, as an omnichannel guy, I'm not specifically a content marketing person, but it's very near and dear to my heart, and we have lots of overlap in many, many areas. So I think that every kind of content person can learn a little bit from content marketing, and content marketers can always learn more from the other related disciplines that surround what they feel is their core remit. So I want to kick off by talking about what you do. So tell us a little bit about your background and what you're working on these days.
For the last 6 years, I've been the Director of Content Strategy and Assessment at the University of Rochester. So that's my full-time job. And I do consulting with other higher ed institutions as well, primarily higher ed institutions, and really focus on helping them look at their data and really examine what content is working on what channels, what audiences they're reaching, where their gaps are, where their strengths are, and then figuring out how to really optimize their content performance to get the most out of all the time they're spending creating all this content.
Excellent. Yes. Okay. Well, that's what we're all trying to do here over at OmnichannelX. Figure out what should we be investing in, how is it going, what is the next thing we should be putting our attention on? Because the problem with omnichannel is it's a million trillion decisions to be made by many, many interacting and overlapping stakeholders. So one of the things that I find to be, we keep coming back to, for example, in our consulting work, is the idea of journeys. So mapping out where people are in terms of achieving their objectives. I, as a consultant, kind of have come up with my own model, which is like the journey is the questions over time that a user asks to in order to achieve their objective. Like they don't know all their answers. They don't even know all their questions at the beginning. So how do we know what questions we want to answer and how to tell where our users are on that journey? How are they making progress? How do we monitor and measure that? And I think you're a perfect person to ask a little bit about some of the techniques you use to tell where people are, and how do you measure something as complex as a user journey?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, a great topic to dive into. So whenever we start looking at user journey, so at higher ed institutions, you have lots of different users, lots of target audiences. You have potential students, current students, potential faculty, staff, all these, government officials. You got all these different audiences you're trying to reach with different content. So whenever I'm doing consulting or whenever we have a new project that comes up, I always start off with, what's your goal? What's your key strategic goal? Where do you want to go? What objectives are you trying to reach?
So who's you? The
So
university or the
it could be the university, it could be a specific department or school that we're working with. So we want to know their individual goals for whatever project, whatever, if they're looking for a website redesign, what are you trying to do with this website? What are you trying to accomplish? So we start there. And then if it is a school or a department, then we also have to take into consideration the institution's goals, or, if it's a department, the school's goals. So you've got to know all the goals that ladder up to that, the highest level, right? All the way up to the top. So that's where we start. And then we look at, okay, who's your target audience? Now you really have to figure out who specifically you're talking to. And when I first started working at the university, uh, the content officers would come to the editorial team and say, here's, new research that we just came up with. We got to write a news story about it. Yes, it's a great story. Who's the audience? And they would say, everybody. No, everybody is not an audience. You have to pick the one audience that can have the biggest impact on helping you reach your goals. And that is your target audience for that piece of content. Now, different content can have different target audiences, but every piece of content should have one target audience. So that now you know who you're trying to reach and what you're trying to get them to do. Now you can start really looking into the data. So what pages are currently reaching those audiences? What questions are those audiences asking? You can start creating your, user personas. You can really start diving into mapping out their journey through your content. And we all know that content journeys are not linear, right? It used to be like you go to this page and then we guide them to this page. So now you have to give them options. You have to realize they can come in from anywhere. They can come in from search, from social, from, coming in on your homepage. So at each stage of the journey, you have to give them content that will guide them to the next stage, knowing that they may be at different stages of the journey when they come in. There may be different audiences coming in and looking at your content. So it's really looking at the data to figure out where the flow is working, whether you're guiding people to the next step. And if you're not, what can you change? What can you do to optimize that? Maybe you're missing a piece of content. Maybe there's a gap in there. There's a question you're not answering, or maybe there's a question you could answer that will get them to flow down into that next step. But it all goes back to measuring all the way to that final conversion to, the request for more information or the get a campus tour or whatever goal you're trying to get them to hit.
Right. So there's an implication there. So you're watching next actions. So
Correct.
if I've targeted my audience with a particular piece of content, I put it out there with this intent, and I've given them exit roads. Sorry. So the which path do they take out helps me understand where in the journey they are, if I've intentionally set up those exits properly.
Exactly. And it's figuring out those calls to action and doing a lot of A/B testing to figure out what verbiage works the best with which audiences, what next piece of content is the most desired by those different audiences, and constantly going back and looking at the data. Every quarter, we will go back and look through, the changes that we made, the optimizations that we've done to figure out, are there new questions now? Is this page ranking for different questions that people are asking that we don't have on that page? Is that going to guide them to where we want them to go? Then we better go back and add that content.
So how does that just, and it's funny I asked, you mentioned that we were talking about this because I just saw something posted by Joe Pulizzi. He just redid his website, and he followed the old adage of one call to action per URL, which is always been for me in corporate situations a little hard to actually manage something like that. So and so in what we were just talking about, I think we're both of the mind that you may come in from anywhere with your intent, your background is, and where you go next is a user choice. So how do you feel about that kind of idea of it just having like the one button, one exit row out of a page?
Yeah, I think it depends on how targeted you are with that content. So sometimes within the journey, now if someone is going to visit this page, more than likely they are a prospective undergraduate student coming in.
Yeah.
They're the ones we're targeting. We know the page is about our chemistry, research that we've just done. The one call to action on that page is going to be go to check out our chemistry department. That's the pretty rare situation.
Hmm.
Usually, there are going to be multiple audiences on the page. You want to give them options. A lot
Hmm.
of times we won't make it a blatant button, go check out our chemistry department, but we'll incorporate links, a lot of internal links within the content with subtle calls to action, with, leading them to the next piece if that's what they're looking for on their particular journey. So
Yeah.
sometimes one call to action, but most of the time we're going to have multiple options for multiple audiences.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it really depends. And I think that we can get a little bit we can get a little bit hyped up in our industry. Like if something works in a certain context, we can declare that a rule. And I often find that it depends. It depends comes back again and again. Yeah, it depends on the business, depends on the kind of content, depends on where they are. If you can do one, great, but that's not always the reality.
Right. And Joe's really focusing on content entrepreneurs who tend to be very niche focused and very audience targeted,
Yeah.
not dealing with large corporate clients with lots of different audiences.
Yeah, no, that's so it totally works for. I mean, of course, not saying like I think it totally makes sense for Joe,
Right.
because of what he's trying to accomplish and who he's targeting. But I think I'm thinking of some of our clients where there is just really a lot of diversity in the people who are going to hit that page, and that content might be good for them, but the next step might be very different.
Right. And you have to find ways to appeal and capture all of those audiences that you can.
Yeah. Okay. So that brings me to the idea of silos. And so we're OmnichannelX. We're often thinking about, so this is the idea. We want to map this journey. We want to measure how people are moving through it. Can you tell us a little bit about how your experience handling the different perspectives, budget holders, stakeholders, et cetera, who are actually touching this journey? So if point A is owned by department A and point B is owned by department B, a little bit how you build a measurement and collaboration strategy around the data.
So historically, higher ed tends to be very siloed.
Yeah.
The structure, just the way the institutions were built, very school focused, with each school with its own departments, and everyone kind of runs their own content, runs their own measurement, runs their own analytics. So when I came in central communications, I started looking around for opportunities just to connect and start those conversations. We started out with just an SEO project on our own content, and we were able to double our organic traffic in the first 6 months. So now we had a case study. Now we could go out to other schools and other departments and take them that and show them we can help you increase your traffic, help you increase your conversions.
Hmm.
Just offering that as a service was able to break down a lot of those barriers, and they were able to say, okay, yeah, come in, here's access to our analytics, and we will value any input you can give us that'll help us drive more traffic. So those little projects and offering to help without trying to come in and tell them you should be doing SEO, you come
Hmm.
in and say, I will do SEO for you. So that was been very helpful. And then, recently in the last 2 years with the migration to Google Analytics 4, we've been able to combine all of the analytics accounts from across the institution into one overall institutional account. So now they all still have their own individual accounts, but we have one account to rule them all, where now we can go and we can track from the medical center, someone that comes into their website all the way through to maybe filling out an application at our music school. So then we can really start showing them traffic from other places so they can start seeing the value of cross promoting, of working with other groups across the institution to help create better content, or to realize that maybe this is a situation where this content should point towards the School of Nursing instead of towards the music school because it just fits better. So always looking for those ideas to create those pillar content areas, and also to cross link back and forth and track the traffic that goes throughout all the different domains and subdomains.
So you mentioned Google Analytics 4. I don't know if it's my own personal interest or whether I'm actually representing the OmnichannelX audience here. But can you talk a little bit about that? What like because there's been a lot of noise about it. I haven't looked into it at all. What is there something the omnichannel folks should know about that's really different that they need to get into with Google Analytics 4? Some features that are like really interesting that they need to take advantage of.
Yeah, I'd say that, the way that I mean, Universal Analytics is no longer tracking websites, so everybody needs to be on Google Analytics 4 if that's their platform. There are other,
Mhm.
analytics platforms you can use. But the thing I love about Google Analytics 4 is that it's all event-based, so everything is an event. Whereas in Universal Analytics, you would have to wait for the user to go to the next page before Google would pass all the information from the previous page to your analytics. So it made for some really messy, not very accurate metrics that you would get and report on.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
now in Google Analytics 4, every time the user scrolls, every time they interact with something, that is sent as a trigger, as an event, so it immediately updates the metrics. So the analytics are much more accurate. They're much more usable. The interface itself is less user-friendly than the previous version. It doesn't have a lot of the built-in
Previous
reports that
version gave me nightmares.
well,
So
then
it's
Google
worse.
Analytics 4 will definitely create, some problems because you have to go in and know what metrics and dimensions you wanna look for. It won't just give you a list and say, "Here's all your, organic traffic for the last year." You have to go in and build that report for you to use.
Wow.
So a lot of our schools and departments, we will just build a dashboard for them so that they
Mm.
can just go in and they don't have to learn the whole tool. So that's been very helpful. It's easier for us. We don't have to teach them how to use all the intricacies of Google Analytics, but the metrics are much more reliable and much more accurate, and you can get to a much more granular level of detail. So it's very helpful.
Awesome. All right. Because I saw you posted about it in your blog, so I thought you're the person to ask. Right. So the tip right there is go get somebody to build your dashboards for you when you
Absolutely.
figure out what you want to know.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. So the next thing I want to ask about is the metaverse. So I'm so happy to see somebody who has a metaverse in their bio because I am big in the metaverse. I'm very excited about it. I was presenting about it a lot, and then AI came and just like knocked the ice cream out of my hand. Um, I'm happy to talk about AI, and I'm sure we will talk a little bit more about AI in a bit. But I want to talk about the metaverse first. Um, what do you see as applications which you think will actually be things that we need to that will go mainstream? You know, as content people, what are some experiences that you think that we should be thinking about, even if they're not here yet, even if we don't have a mainstream adoption? And what is a little bit? I have some feelings about this, so I might jump in here. The transition. What does the road from here to full metaverse look like?
Yeah, so, I mean, metaverse adoption is very slow right now because the technology is still catching up to, where we're going to get into mass adoption.
Mhm.
And we've still got a ways to go with the speed of the processors and the latency issues, but the advances that are already being made in augmented reality, I think, are going to be the transition that moves us into virtual reality.
Mhm.
And the idea of not having to always have our phones or always be sitting in front of our monitors at our desk when we can just put on our glasses and our monitors will appear in front of us and we can manipulate data, verbally or manually much more interactively. I think we're a few years away from that maybe. And that is going to change the way that we communicate, the way we market, the way that we interact with each other, um, massively. And I think, what we're seeing right now with AI and the hype around AI, once the technology for augmented reality and virtual reality get to that same point where ChatGPT was when it launched, which is still, it's the worst AI we're ever going to use, at that stage. And look where it's already come. Once we get to that point with, augmented and virtual reality, it's going to change the game even more because we're not going to be sitting down and looking through our search. We're going to be talking to AI within this augmented virtual metaverse that we're going to exist in. And it's going to be much more conversational. So then we're going to have to learn how to get our content discovered in that new environment and how to create these really immersive experiences instead of just trying to market with banner ads.
Right. So there's a few things that I think are implied by that move from what you just said. there's the discovery is really becomes really interesting because are you gonna like is there gonna be a page two search results in metaverse? Like you have once you're broken free of the page of the web format, then you're really down to the top hits. How do you make sure that you're in the top hits? And if it's a spoken result, you know, it's position zero or nothing.
Yeah.
You know, like when I ask Alexa anything, and she digs up some website, it's that's the website that got chosen, and every other of the trillion sites in the world, pages in the world, were not. And so it definitely makes us up our game in that sense. Um, in terms of like actual use cases, I'm interested. I can see a lot in manufacturing and medicine, things where we're have complex physical actions to do. I'm interested in, from a university perspective, for example, in a university perspective, is there something when we're doing what we would consider to be normal computing today? Uh, what do you think is probably gonna what could we actually be doing with this stuff?
Yeah, well, I think from a learning perspective, the immersion capability, I mean, instead of sitting in an astronomy class and looking at pictures or slides of the
Mm,
universe, you could be out in the middle of the universe and, actually manually manipulating, different asteroids. And I think those types of experiences lend themselves very well to educational environments. I think, the ability to track certifications on the blockchain and include different learning capabilities and milestones within this storage medium are incredible. And then even like there's virtual labs that you can go and create real experiments that function with real physics and, gravity and chemistry, and you can be in a lab using very expensive equipment that you don't actually have access to in the physical world. You
hmm.
can be working with scientists from around the world and get diverse points of view and very different, um, thoughts around how to come up with solutions to problems. I think it creates incredible opportunities for communities, global communities that can form up to solve like the most pressing problems that we have, whether it's,
Mm.
environmental or, any of the really pressing problems that are so difficult to face in these small constructs that we've built with our businesses and our institutions, where we could create these, global categories of people who are just focused on fixing this one particular area.
I, you've triggered me in a good way, uh, because I'm thinking back now, and my first, we're of an age where you probably had maybe you had the same experience where most of my first contact with the applications that I now use in my day-to-day life were all in school. And I think people, if you're under 40, under 35, computers were already everywhere. And so a lot of people, I think, don't haven't lived through the introduction of a new category of device. They weren't there to watch computers become ubiquitous. And so it's kind of a little bit unimaginable. And I think that what happened is when Google first tried to do Google Glass, they tried to take the direct smartphone route.
Right.
They said, okay, everyone has a smartphone, everyone should buy one of these headsets. And like they're doing it big styles there, Google. I actually preferred what Microsoft did, which was pull a Microsoft, which was talk to big manufacturers and big old staunch, companies, people in suits, and try to roll out their augmented reality stuff there. But you've given me a third idea, which is the school. You know, if you learn, I remember going to the computer lab because all the computers in the school were in one room, and so that you could have the VR lab, and like you can teach a class there. One teacher only gets 1 hour a week in there or whatever, but that means that hundreds and thousands of students are having VR experiences where they're actually doing something. And so I think that if education could be like it was with regular computing, a huge driver here, because it was that. And I remember my mother saying, I'm learning computers at the school, got to get one for the house so he can keep doing this learning stuff. And there's that it's I've been talking about the metaverse for like 18 months. That pathway never really occurred to me in the same way. Yeah, that could be huge. Do you know if any institutions are actually setting that kind of environment up?
We actually have one at the University of Rochester. We have Studio X, which is part of our library program, and
Mm-hmm.
they have AR, VR, all sorts of goggles that you can check out, and you can bring the Oculus home and have it for 3 days, 6 days, however long you want to check it out. And they
Right.
have all sorts of different um, every month they'll get together and have a meetup and talk about what they have created in the augmented reality environment and what things the students are working on. And they're working with other students in virtual environments from across, the institutional landscape across the world. So it's a fascinating way, and it's different with kids today. I mean, my wife and I have 6 kids between the two of us from 16 to 24. And so a lot of them are in college now or getting ready to go to college or just out of college. And they don't think twice about coming down and throwing on the PlayStation VR goggles and spending 2 hours in, whatever VR game they're playing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's the same attitude that they have when they go to school. It's not like it's a different thing. It's just a different environment that they're putting themselves into. And I think
Awesome.
that mindset, whereas, I'll bring one of my friends over and it's like, oh, it's this weird, different, completely unique thing
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
kind of doesn't really feel right. But the next generation is all in on this, and it's just a different consumption method.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, and I think that especially as an omni-channel guy, every time a new channel or consumption method comes out, people think it's this new thing. It's just like because I used to sit at a desktop and now I got a phone in my hand. We got to rethink everything.
Right.
Um, yeah, we need to think about how this thing is different. But we have web pages on phones and we have them on desktops, and we will have content from the internet in the metaverse. I describe the metaverse as the immersive web. Like that's in 2 words. That's what I would call it. It's the internet you can stick your head inside or your whole body actually. Um, so I'm super pumped. I'm actually you're it's rare that a topic gets me almost too giddy. I'm speechless here. So yeah, no, I'm super pumped about that. And in high schools, do you know of any high schools that are going there as well?
I'm not aware of any high schools with like AR VR programs set up. I know some high schools do have like clubs where the kids will get together and,
Mm,
and meet with a faculty. But I don't know that they're actually doing any sort of development or consumption in augmented or virtual spaces.
right. I'm gonna look into that after the show.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that I think that's going to be huge because if the educational environment is there, and even if you do it like as I said, we had typing class or whatever, we had like the computer hour, even if it's 1 hour a week, um, that's going to change everything because it's for me with the metaverse. I was waiting for AR. I was literally waiting for AR. I was like VR, whatever. I thought VR was a joke until I tried it once
Yeah.
and I was an instant convert. The minute I put the thing on and actually got in there, I went, "Oh, this is the future."
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And, I love what Apple's doing with their AR, VR goggles. So you could
Mhm.
be walking along in the real world and it can be guiding you to your destination and showing you interesting things along the way and talking in your ear and being your tour guide. And then when you get there, you can sit down and now you can go to wherever you want in the world in a virtual environment. So yeah,
Yeah,
very excited about what that is all going to bring to us.
and I people the complaints I get are like, "Oh, it's too big, it's too heavy," and I'm like, again? You weren't there for cell phones. Like, you want
Right.
to talk big and heavy? They were big and heavy.
Huge. Yeah.
Yeah, huge, huge, like back pain causingly heavy, and then expensive. It's like, oh, it's $800 or $2,000. My computer. My family bandied together to buy this, what now would be a joke, black and green screen. Like I could fit, like my hand is bigger than the screen thing. It was $7,000. And that was then, the 7,000 then. So you're talking like, this is like buying a car.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not like that didn't hold computers back, because if there is a useful application, if there's something that people can go there and be more productive, socialize in a new way, have a better experience, it's going to go. It's going to take off.
Yeah, absolutely. And the advances that they're making, I mean, what we're seeing with the advancement of AI, and then,
Mm-hmm,
at the university, we're doing a lot of research with quantum computers. I
mm-hmm.
mean, those sorts of technologies are going to so exponentially change the way that we operate and function in the world. Um, and AR and VR are just a part of that.
Yeah, they're just, yeah, they're one of the touch points in
Yep.
the whole omni-channel experience.
Yes.
Um, I uh, I uh, I am very excited about when you take AI and VR and AR, it simply being able to speak reliably to our devices. I find that, for example, when I turn on ChatGPT and I speak to it and I give it like a 2 paragraph prompt, it's just so much more reliable and accurate than any of the other previous things. Like speech text is really bad.
Still
It's
bad.
still in a
Still
lot
bad.
of, it's really bad in a lot of places. But
Yeah.
these new large language models are the thing that we needed to unlock that actually working. Like I can't believe that ChatGPT's been out for a year, or ChatGPT 4, ChatGPT, the big explosive, you
Right.
know, killer app ChatGPT has been out for a year, and I still speak to Alexa, and it's like pulling teeth.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I enjoy playing around in Pi.ai and Character.ai, and you can have really good conversations. I listened to a 15-minute podcast the other day where it was just the podcast host interviewing Pi AI. And it was a great conversation. And they were asking questions. It was asking, well, would you prefer that I do it this way or that I do it this way? How would you like me to explain this to you? It's like, why is it asking for my preferences? That's the way that these tools are trained to be
Mm-hmm.
empathetic. They have no feelings, they have no empathy, but they are trained to pretend that they do.
Yes.
And it
Yeah.
makes a very interesting listening and interacting experience. And they're already talking about using these in senior living facilities where now you can have a companion for someone in the voice of their family member that they're comfortable with, that can talk to them all day long. And you
Mm.
don't have to have a staff member in there monitoring them all the time. So
It's, yeah, it's both beautiful and painful. It's because like I think it's kind of creepy as hell, but at the
right.
same time, I totally get it. Like as someone who was with their parent as they were in that stage,
Yep.
they just need to repeat the same story, maybe 60 times a day, and
Yeah.
having someone who's there to listen to it every time as if it was fresh would have been comforting to them.
Very, absolutely, absolutely. And like my daughter was having some problems with her math class at college, and I was like, "Well, go over to the Learning Resource Center." And she's like, "Well, it's raining. I don't want to walk over there. I got to make an appointment." Well, jump on ChatGPT and ask it to help you, and it will talk back and forth with you and help you solve your problems. And it did.
Yeah, awesome. See, and so for me, connecting it back to AR VR, when you have your hands free and you're doing
Mhm.
things with your hands, voice is your input output. The phone, it's that leaning over, bent over, neck hurt kind of thing that we have to do with the phones, which is for me the worst thing about them. And sitting, we're
Yeah,
there, all the studies on how bad it is for us to live like this, stuck to a desk. If we could do that, to be free of those constraints, is fantastic. But that just leaves voice. Well, I
well,
guess it's theoretically the hand typing.
yeah.
Uh,
I mean,
yeah.
the Apple glasses have, I don't know, like six inward facing cameras and 11 outward facing cameras or something like that. So
Mhm.
it can track your hands so you can manipulate your screens. It's very like Minority Report ish.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, being able to free ourselves from our screens would be huge.
Yeah. So no, you're right. So I should separate because there's navigation, there's point to click, there's I want to open that, I want to look at that, I want to scroll.
Right.
That super easy. I'm talking about real text, like entry of content, like when I'm creating content, when I'm writing a document. Writing a document in VR right now is still a bit of an awkward beast. But
Very much.
being able to do a tweet or a page or a review or give feedback on some other piece of content, that it if you had voice, real accurate voice, then AI, bringing the AI stuff, which includes the voice modality and VR together, that I think is going to be another game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very exciting.
Awesome. All right. Okay, so we're coming close to time. Okay, so so we've talked about all the channels. We talked about we haven't talked about social so much, but we've talked about various types of channels. You're an AI and data guy. Um, Key metrics. I talk a lot about mapping analytics to real business metrics. What changing from, okay, I've got clicks and views or likes and shares, to turning that into something that actually maps to my business. So I'm interested in your opinion. I'm a big fan of, for example, customer effort score, and looking at lead close times, looking at total customer churn. Are there some metrics which you think are good universal ones that more content people need to be looking at, that are being kind of eclipsed by our usual, I'd say, lazy habit of just going, okay, well, I got lots of clicks on my page, so I'm doing my job.
Yeah, I think moving away from those, the vanity metrics, or really understanding if they are actually a good indicator that of success.
Yeah.
And I think that
Oh,
goes
and
back
sorry,
to
and if there's when we do talk about, if you've had experience when you're aggregating that data across multiple channels, so not just the web. So it's very easy for me to refer to the clicks and the
right.
views, but in social you have other metrics, and when we're talking about the metaverse and newsletters and chat bots, we're going to have more and more. So what are some kind of universal ways to look at this? I would be another way.
And I think it goes back to figuring out your goal and figuring out what your strategy are. What are you trying to accomplish? And if you can measure that that is being accomplished. So we do a lot with conversions. What are the conversions that you're trying to measure? What are you trying to get your user to do? That's the, you know, kind of the golden nugget, the end goal that you're trying to get, So kind of number of conversions is the key converter there. But sometimes like if we're just trying to
Is
increase.
a conversion is not always a sale.
Correct.
So
Correct.
let's because some people hear conversion, they think, oh yeah, I bought the T-shirt.
Right. Sometimes conversion is just going to the next piece of content.
Yeah.
Sometimes that might be the conversion. So if we're just trying to build brand awareness,
Hmm.
then it comes down to a variety of things. Are you getting, the reach you want with your content? Are you hitting your right audience? Are you getting engagement? So a lot of times what we'll do is we will combine all those different metrics and say, here's our baseline, here's where we're functioning on average. Is this piece of content exceeding that, or is it not? Is it, not is it not a winning piece of content currently? And we'll come up with kind of an overall score for different channels, and then we'll aggregate those all together. So we'll say, overall this month social was 74 out of 100, and it takes in likes, shares, clicks, and we weight those based on how much we see those as indicating that the user is really engaged, they're really consuming this content. It's not just reach. Reach is important, it's a factor, but it's not weighted the highest. Engagement or shares are usually weighted the highest for
Hmm.
for social. So different channels will have different weights for different metrics, and then we'll aggregate those into overall scores. So then we can say to leadership, our communications department score this month was an 82. Here's the things that didn't work well. Here's what we're going to do to try to improve those. So it's really kind of figuring out what metrics are going to indicate that you're reaching your goal. And if you're not reaching your goal, if those metrics are not showing success, what do you need to do to change those? And how can you make sure that you monitor the changes to make sure that those are having the desired impact? because we'll
Could
go
you?
back and look at the last quarter and say, all those changes we made, what worked, what didn't.
Right. Do you have an example of like a before and after that you can talk about? Doesn't have to name any names, but like a team who was measuring in, let's say, a more traditional way, and then what did they move to measuring?
So, what we were looking at when our team was doing website redesigns, we would look at overall, um, like page views was the big metric. How many page views did we get? If the page view count went up, that's
We were
great.
happy.
Then the new website is working better. If time on page went up, that's great. But is it? Are you trying to get the user to go to this page and consume all the content? Or how about let's figure out how many times they had to click to how many pages to actually get a conversion, to actually schedule an appointment to come in and see you. Because if that's the goal you're looking for, you want to
Mm,
actually reduce the number of pages as much as you can. You want to get them to convert as quickly as possible because you're going to lose people at each step of your journey. So,
mhm,
like our admissions process for international students was very difficult for them to find all the information they needed. It was in very, it was in different places. The language wasn't really what good. They were spending a lot of time on pages. So then we were able to combine a lot of that information onto one page in a much easier to consume, sort of text for non-native English speakers. So we were able to reduce the total number of pages that were viewed. We were able to reduce the click count, but we were able to increase conversions. So just
mhm.
not looking at that vanity metric of page views equals success and really figuring out how do you get to your end goal the quickest.
And so, sorry, excuse me. So it comes back to this idea of um, defining and chaining calls to action. Yes.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So we're on the same page here. So I think I'm a customer journey obsessed. I think people in the podcast are sick of hearing me talk about it. And that's for me the part that's often missing in customer journey mapping. When we do it our way, you're not done the journey map unless you figured out your calls to action, what what are the data you're going to use in order to make the experience be what you want it to be at that stage, and what data are you going to capture. How do you know that you're moving on to the next stage?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that gives you take the what the users wants to know and what they're trying to do, and you map it to that, and then you can tell, is our content moving people along this journey?
Yep. Absolutely.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we're on time. I've had a great time. uh I don't know why it took us so long.
Me neither.
Yeah, but we'll definitely make sure to talk to you in coming into the new year and see how we can get you back involved. Thank you again, Brian, for joining us, and thank you all our listeners for tuning in as always. Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening. This has been the Omnichannel Podcast with Noz Urbina, founder of Urbina Consulting. Let us know on LinkedIn or Twitter what you liked from this episode, what you think we missed, who do you think we should interview next. And now that you've heard what we're passionate about, you can also check out urbinaconsulting.com to learn a little bit about what we do. See you next time.